I'm a 31-year-old internal medicine resident, and for most of my adult life, I thought I was building something solid on my own terms with my own hands. I'd spent years clawing my way through med school, juggling debt, double shifts, and sleepless nights. I wasn't rich, but I was proud. I thought that made me immune to the kind of manipulation you only hear about in anonymous forums or courtroom dramas. Turns out, I was wrong. It started with a phone call from my mother. Nothing unusual, she'd been calling more often lately, always with a warm voice and a touch of that immigrant guilt, the kind soaked in honey but sharp around the edges. "Come by for dinner," she said. "Jacob's home from school and your father made stew the way you like." Her tone was calm, coaxing. Familiar. I agreed. That was my first mistake. My younger brother Jacob is 26, bright, funny, full of charm, and completely directionless. He'd dropped out of college twice, tried and quit 3 different jobs in as many years, and somehow still managed to post beach selfies in Cancun and Iceland more frequently than I checked my email. And yet, my parents treated him like the second coming of Einstein, if Einstein had a maxed-out Amex and an emotional support vape pen. That evening, their modest suburban home smelled like cardamom and nostalgia, the kind of scent that takes you back to safer times, even if they were only safe in memory. I stepped into the kitchen and immediately noticed something off. My dad didn't greet me with his usual dry humor, and my mom's eyes were puffier than usual, like she'd been crying or bracing to. Jacob sat at the dining table in a designer hoodie, scrolling his phone like he had more important places to be. He barely looked up when I walked in. We ate in silence at first. My dad made small talk about the hospital, my rotations, the weather. Then, like pulling a lever, the tone shifted. "We need to talk," my mother said, dabbing her lips with a napkin. "About Jacob." I felt a sinking in my chest. I knew that voice. It was the same tone she used when she told me at 15 that my grandma died or that the family dog had to be put down. Soft, tragic, manipulative. "He's in some trouble," she began carefully. "Some financial issues. A little more than we thought." I put my fork down. "Define a little more." Jacob didn't look up. My dad cleared his throat. "Credit cards, car payments, some personal loans. Around 80,000, maybe more." I blinked, and my mother leaned forward, hands clasped as if in prayer. "We need your help. He's at risk of defaulting. His credit score is wrecked, and he can't qualify for another loan. But you have a good job now, a stable income. We thought maybe you could co-sign. Or lend him what he needs to catch up, just until he finds his footing." I laughed. It wasn't a joyful sound. More like disbelief punching its way out of my lungs. "You're asking me to bail him out with what? My non-existent savings, the loan forgiveness. The government keeps teasing but never delivers. I barely cover rent and groceries without panic attacks." "You're a doctor," my father said, as if the word alone conjured money. "You'll make it back." I looked at Jacob. He shrugged. "It's not like I asked for this," he mumbled. "No," I snapped. "You just spent your way into a black hole while Mom and Dad applauded your every step." My mom flinched. "That's not fair." I stood up. "What's not fair is that I've been on my own since undergrad. You cut me off the day I turned 21. No help, no handouts. You said it was about responsibility." What was Jacob's excuse? Silence. Then my dad. "He's different. He's sensitive." That word, sensitive, it hit like a slap. I walked out. I didn't slam the door. I didn't yell. But something shifted in me permanently that night, like a foundation cracking in the cold. And I wish I could say that was the worst of it. I really do. But then came the envelope. A week later, I found it jammed into my mailbox. No return address, just my name typed in stiff black font. Inside a printed document, a formal loan agreement stating I had verbally committed to giving Jacob $50,000 at the last family dinner. Signed at the bottom, my name forged. Badly. I stared at the page, my heart pounding against my ribs like it wanted out. They couldn't be serious. But they were. Because 2 hours later, I got a call from a law office downtown. They were taking me to court. I stood there in my apartment, that forged loan agreement in my hand, my fingers trembling not from fear, but from the sheer absurdity of it all. The nerve, the gall. the betrayal. I sat down hard on the edge of my bed, like my knees gave out under the weight of years of trying to be the good son, the reliable one, the adult in a household of emotional toddlers. This wasn't just favoritism anymore. This was war. The law office that called me later that afternoon was real. Polite, crisp, efficient. A woman named Denise informed me like she was reading a lunch order that my parents and brother had filed a civil suit claiming I'd made a verbal commitment to loan Jacob the money and were seeking restitution for damages due to broken trust and financial obstruction. I almost laughed on the phone, but instead I asked Denise to repeat it. Every word, slowly, so I could hear just how far my own family was willing to twist reality. The next day, I met with a lawyer of my own, Jason Lee, mid-40s former litigator turned small practice specialist in family disputes. He wore off-the-rack suits and had the deadpan humor of someone who'd seen it all and stopped flinching. "Let me guess," he said, flipping through the documents I brought. "You're the responsible sibling. Parents cut you off early to toughen you up, and now they want the reward for raising a high-functioning adult. Meanwhile, Golden Child can't balance a checkbook and spends like a crypto billionaire in 2021. I blinked. "That's exactly it." He smiled. "Classic. We can fight this." I nodded, trying to hold myself together. They forged my signature. "We'll need proof? And if you've got any witnesses from that dinner where this verbal agreement supposedly happened, that helps too. Emails, texts, even a recording." A recording? That word struck a nerve. I dug through my phone that night, scrolling through my voice memos, an old habit I picked up during med school when I needed to document verbal abuse from a nightmare attending. Call it paranoia, but I'd recorded that dinner. Something about the way they set it up, how rehearsed it all felt, it pushed a quiet alarm in my brain. And there it was. A 2-hour audio file time-stamped clear as day. Me saying no multiple times, my father pushing, my mother crying. Jacob silent. That tape was about to become my nuclear defense. Jason lit up when he heard it. "This isn't just helpful, it's gold. Not only can we get this dismissed, we can counter for defamation and harassment." I should have felt victorious, but all I felt was hollow. This wasn't some stranger I was fighting. This was the woman who sewed my Halloween costumes by hand, the man who taught me how to parallel park, the brother I used to read comic books with on lazy Sunday afternoons. And they were treating me like an ATM with a heartbeat. The news spread fast through the family grapevine. My aunt's cousins, even people I hadn't spoken to in years, started messaging me. Half of them stunned, half of them scolding. "It's family," one uncle wrote. "You don't take family to court." I replied, "Tell that to the ones who sued me first." One message hit different. It was from my cousin Emma. We'd been close as kids, but drifted when she moved cross-country. She simply wrote, "You're not crazy. They did this to my dad, too." That line sat in my stomach like a rock, I called her. And what she told me flipped the script completely. Years ago, her dad, my mom's brother, had co-signed a massive loan for my parents. It was framed as a short-term business investment, but the money vanished. When he asked for accountability, they iced him out. The same pattern, the same guilt-laced manipulation, the same crocodile tears. He ended up defaulting, lost his small business, and moved to Nevada to start over. Cut contact. We'd just called him Weird Uncle Mike growing up. Now I knew the truth. I brought this to Jason, and he nodded slowly. They have a pattern. This helps. A lot. It shows they've weaponized family before. Not a one-time lapse, it's a habit. We got a written statement from Uncle Mike, quiet, humble, but full of scars. Meanwhile, Jacob was living his influencer-light fantasy, posting filtered photos from poolside Airbnbs and tweeting vague jabs like, "Some people really show you who they are when money's involved." I didn't respond, but I read every word. Then came the next punch, an offer to settle. Their lawyer sent it through cold and clinical. $50,000 payment to Jacob in exchange for dropping the lawsuit. Consider it a gesture of goodwill to preserve family ties. I stared at that sentence for a full minute. Then I laughed, a deep, bitter sound that didn't feel like mine. Jason asked me, "Do you want to counter with terms? Maybe they back off, we get damages." I said no. I want the truth on record. He nodded. We'll see them in court. But just when I thought the worst was over, another message arrived. One that would change everything. It was from my father. And it said only this, "See? You have no idea what you're walking into. There are things you don't know. Things you were never meant to know." The message from my father sat on my phone like a ticking bomb. You have no idea what you're walking into. There are things you don't know. Things you were never meant to know. It didn't scare me, not exactly, but it unsettled me. Because it wasn't defensive. It wasn't angry. It was ominous. Like a warning wrapped in regret. Like something had slipped out of their control. For the next few days, I kept my head down. Work, court prep, sleepless nights. I'd show up at the hospital, fix broken people, smile through rounds, and then come home and unravel piece by piece. Jason kept me steady. So did Emma. But inside something was cracking. And then almost casually, everything changed. Jason called me one morning, sounding breathless. "I need you to come in, now." I met him at his office, and he didn't waste time. We subpoenaed bank records like we discussed. "Your name came up on a joint account with Jacob. Opened 4 years ago. You were listed as a co-owner." My blood went cold. What? "It's under your name and his. Mostly inactive for years until 6 months ago." That's when things get weird. 2 wire transfers totaling 50 grand were deposited, then withdrawn in chunks. Car lease, crypto wallet, one went into a trust. The kicker. The source account was your parents', but the deposits were disguised to look like reimbursements from you. "I never opened that account," I said. He nodded. "We figured. But there's more. You're listed on a second document power of attorney, dated the same month." The world tilted. No way. Jason slid the file across the desk. "You need to look at this." There it was, my signature. Again, forged. Better this time, more convincing, but not mine. They had faked a financial paper trail to make it look like I'd been secretly funding Jacob all along. Like the lawsuit wasn't just valid, it was a response to my betrayal. "That's not negligence," Jason said grimly. "That's fraud, possibly criminal. And if we can prove it, this case flips on its head." My mind raced. All those dinners, all those offhand comments about me being so generous or too good for your own good, they were seeding the narrative, slowly, methodically, preparing for this moment. And then the realization hit me like ice water. This wasn't just about money. This was about control. My family hadn't just turned against me, they were building a story. A version of events where they were the victims and I was the ungrateful child who turned his back. And they were doing it so smoothly, so damn convincingly that even I started doubting myself. "Can we fight this?" I asked Jason, voice raw. "We can do more than that," he said. "We can expose them. And maybe that should have been satisfying. Maybe it should have felt like the moment the tide turned. But what I felt was something closer to grief. Because in that moment, I knew I wasn't just losing a court battle, I was losing my family. Fully. Finally. I left the office dazed, walking the streets of downtown in a fog. The city blurred around me, cars, neon, the late winter wind clawing through my coat. I ended up on a bench outside an old church, hands clenched in my lap like a kid waiting to be scolded. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered. Static. Then a voice. "You think you know the whole story," the woman said. "But your mother's been hiding something since before you were born." I froze. "Who is this?" "I worked with her, a long time ago. Check the probate records. Essex County, 1993. Click. The call ended. I sat there, heartbeat thundering. 1993. I was born in 92. My brother in 96. What the hell was in a probate file from the year between? I pulled out my phone, opened the public court records system, and searched. There it was. A name I'd never seen before, Elena Santoro. Deceased. Died with no will. Her next of kin listed Isabella Santoro, my mother. And then I saw it. A property transferred into a trust, with my name. My name. I wasn't just involved in some fake loan. I wasn't just being framed. They were hiding something much, much bigger. I drove straight to the Essex County Clerk's office like my life depended on it. The drive was a blur, gray streets, red lights I barely registered, and a gnawing in my gut that made my hands shake on the wheel. I wasn't sure what I was chasing, but I knew something had been buried, hidden for decades. And now it was clawing its way out. The clerk at the counter was a woman in her 60s wearing thick reading glasses and a cardigan peppered with cat hair. Probate records. We've got digital access for most things, but anything pre-2000 might still be in the archives, she said, typing slowly. I gave her the name Elena Santoro. Died in 93. I spelled it twice. Her eyebrows lifted just a little. We don't get many folks asking about that one. She printed a form, handed it to me, and pointed to a reading room. You'll want box 2499. Someone from the back will bring it. I waited in a dusty corner room with humming fluorescent lights. There was a clock ticking, too loud. It made everything feel like a countdown. A young guy in jeans brought in a worn cardboard box and left without a word. I opened it and saw papers that smelled like mildew and grief. Elena Santoro, death certificate. Died of a stroke at 47. No surviving spouse. Only next of kin listed Isabella Santoro, my mother. But it was the next file that froze me. A document outlining the transfer of property. Not just any property, a brownstone in Montclair valued then at over $300,000. Transferred to a trust in my name, dated the week after I was born, signed by my mother, marked irrevocable. My heart kicked. Why would my mother transfer a property into my name as an infant? Why hide it? Why never mention it? There was more. Tucked between receipts and notarized pages was a faded envelope addressed in looping cursive for Michael when he's ready. Michael, my birth name. Inside was a letter, handwritten and shaky, emotional. My darling boy. I don't know if you'll ever read this or what your mother will tell you about me, but you deserve to know the truth. I wasn't supposed to raise you. Isabella promised to take care of you financially, legally. I was too sick. I had no choice. But you were always mine. Always. This house is yours. Your beginning, even if I wasn't allowed to stay for the rest. I love you more than you'll ever know. Elena. I read it 3 times. 4. My fingers trembled, my eyes burned, but I kept rereading, hoping the words would change. They didn't. Elena Santoro wasn't just my great aunt. She was my biological mother. And Isabella, the woman who raised me, had never told me. Not once. Not through childhood, not through adolescence, not even when I asked why I looked so different from Jacob, why my blood type didn't match hers. Suddenly, everything shifted. The coldness, the favoritism, the way she clung to Jacob like he was her last fragile glass ornament and treated me like a tool to be sharpened, used, then put away. I wasn't her son. I was her responsibility. I stumbled out of the building, letter in hand, heart jackhammering. My phone buzzed. It was Jason. Are you sitting down? No, I said. I just found out my mom isn't my mom. What do you have? He hesitated. We ran a background trace on Jacob. There's something else you need to see. I drove back to his office without thinking. When I got there, he had the file ready. This never showed up because he was a minor when it happened. But sealed records are easier to poke at when there's a court proceeding. He slid it across the table. In 2012, Jacob was involved in a DUI. He was 17. He struck a cyclist. Fatality. A woman in her 50s. The case was buried, ruled an accident. No charges filed. Because of his age, I asked, but Jason shook his head. Because your father paid off the victim's family. Quiet settlement. Untraceable. And your mother. She used Elena's trust fund, your trust fund, to do it. I couldn't breathe. The house, the money, the lie. All of it wrapped around a cover-up for a death I never knew happened. My inheritance had bought silence. Blood money signed in my name. Jason leaned in. They've built their lives off you. Your trust, your name, your silence. And now that you're standing up, they're trying to bury you in guilt and forged paper trails. I stared at the file, then at him. What happens next? We shift. No more defense. We go full counterclaim. Fraud, identity theft, misappropriation of assets. And if we want to go public, press, social media, all of it, it'll be explosive. I nodded slowly. But even as my brain raced with legal terms, my heart was somewhere else. Back in that letter. back in a memory I didn't know I had. I could almost hear her voice. Not Isabella's, Elena's. A lullaby. Italian, soft and lilting, playing from a music box. One I hadn't seen in decades. That night I tore through my closet. Deep in a box marked childhood. Keep under old report cards and a broken Game Boy, I found it. A tiny wooden music box, hand-painted, faded, chipped. I turned the crank. It played a slow, haunting melody, familiar, bittersweet. Inside, taped to the lid, was a tiny folded photo. A woman, Elena, smiling, holding a baby. Me, scrawled in pen on the back. For my Michael, you'll find your way back. I stared at that tiny photo of Elena holding me. Her smile soft, her eyes full of something I'd never seen in Isabella's warmth without condition. It was the kind of smile you give someone when you know you won't get to keep them. My fingers traced the edge of the paper, as if contact alone could answer the question that was tearing through my skull. Why? Why would a woman give up her child, then hide that truth behind forged trusts and buried names? Why would another woman, my mother, take that child, raise him, only to spend years weaponizing silence and guilt against him? I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the floor with the music box playing on repeat, letting that lullaby echo through the walls until dawn. In that moment, I realized this wasn't just a court battle anymore. It wasn't just about lies or betrayal or money. It was about reclaiming my identity from people who spent 3 decades erasing it. Jason filed the counterclaim the following Monday. Fraud, misappropriation of trust assets, identity forgery. He attached all the evidence, the altered bank accounts, the forged documents, the statement from Uncle Mike, even the probate file from Elena's estate. But the real bombshell was what we added last, the connection to the fatal DUI Jacob caused. Jason flagged it as potential criminal cover-up involving misuse of trust funds. The court date was set 6 weeks out. In the meantime, things got ugly. My parents must have sensed the momentum shift because I started receiving messages that read more like threats than family outreach. My mother left a voicemail at 3 a.m. sobbing, "You're tearing this family apart. You're letting outsiders poison your mind." My father texted me once, "You're throwing away everything we gave you." I didn't respond, but it was Jacob who finally snapped. He showed up outside my building. He waited in the parking lot, leaning against his car with a cigarette, wearing mirrored sunglasses like some parody of a movie villain. When I approached, he didn't smile. "You could have just helped me," he said. "I tried. For years. You threw it all away." He flicked ash onto the concrete. "You don't know what it's like, living in your shadow, being the mess up. Mom never shut up about how perfect you were." I laughed. It wasn't bitter this time, just tired. "You think I had it easy? I was their insurance policy, their backup plan. You were the golden child. I was the guarantee." He stepped closer. "They're not going to let you win, you know. They'll go down with you if they have to. Then I'll see them in court," I said and walked away. But something about the way he said it, "they'll go down with you," stuck in my head. 2 nights later, Emma called. "You need to come over, now." I drove across town to her apartment, and when I walked in, she was holding an envelope like it had thorns. "I got this in the mail. No return address, but it's postmarked from Montclair." Inside was a USB drive. No note, just a sticker with a date, April 10th, 2012. We plugged it into her laptop and opened the only file on it, grainy dash cam footage, muted, time-stamped. A residential street. A teenage boy speeding down in a silver sedan. Then impact. A woman crossing the road is struck. She flips forward onto the hood, then crumples on the pavement. The car slows, pauses, then drives off. I covered my mouth. "That's Jacob's car." Emma nodded. "And that's the woman who died." She paused the video. "Look closer." Another car follows behind. Same make and model as our family's SUV, slows at the scene. A man steps out. "My father." He checks the woman. "She's already gone." He looks around, then pulls out his phone. Emma whispered, "That's when the cover-up started." I didn't say anything for a long time. My ears rang. The video had no sound, but I didn't need it. I could feel the silence. Heavy, complicit. Whoever sent this someone inside the system, someone tired of keeping the secret, knew the case was about to explode. Jason reviewed it the next morning and nearly choked on his coffee. This changes everything. If we hand this over to prosecutors, they'll reopen the death investigation. It goes from civil to criminal, fast. He looked at me. But you need to be sure. If this hits the courtroom, there's no going back. I stared at the paused image of my father kneeling beside a dead woman, deciding in real time to bury it all. My voice was steady when I spoke. Turn it in. Jason nodded. You got it. As he filed the footage with the district attorney, I took the long way home. Drove past the old Montclair brownstone, my birthright, apparently. A for sale sign now hung crooked on the lawn. My stomach turned. They were liquidating everything, burning the evidence. But they'd missed one thing. That house wasn't theirs to sell. I stood across the street from the Montclair brownstone as the wind tugged at the for sale sign like it was trying to rip it from the earth. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Weathered, forgotten. But my name, Michael Santoro, was still tied to it. Legally, spiritually. That house wasn't just bricks and deed. It was the truth my mother tried to bury. Back at Jason's office, I handed over a scanned copy of the original trust document Elena had signed in '93. This proves I'm the sole beneficiary, I said. Jason flipped through the papers, nodding slowly. If the house is in an irrevocable trust with you as the named beneficiary, they had no legal right to list it, let alone sell it. If they've already accepted an offer, that's wire fraud. I didn't want to sue again. I was already drowning in court filings and depositions. But if they were willing to burn everything to avoid accountability, I had no choice. I authorized Jason to file a cease and desist and notify the real estate broker. The sale stalled within 48 hours. That was the opening shot. The legal battle shifted overnight. The original lawsuit they filed against me was unraveling fast. Our counterclaim was gaining steam. The DA's office had officially reopened the 2012 fatality investigation. The dashcam footage was authenticated. I testified under oath, handed over everything, letters, audio, financials. It was like exorcising a ghost through paperwork. But even as the facts stacked in my favor, I could feel the emotional toll grinding me down. I was going to work by habit alone, rounds, consults, then leaving before anyone could ask if I was okay. Emma was the only one checking in regularly. She brought soup. She stayed quiet. She didn't ask me to explain the hole I felt in my chest. Then came Discovery Day. Jason and I sat across from their legal team in a beige conference room that smelled like old coffee and ink toner. My mother sat at the far end of the table, spine rigid pearls around her neck like armor. My father didn't make eye contact. Jacob chewed gum like he was bored at a dentist's office. When Jason presented the forged signatures, the trust fund misuse, and the dashcam footage, their lawyer went pale. The judge ordered immediate mediation. For once, they couldn't bluff or cry their way out. The bomb dropped when we revealed the power of attorney fraud. My mother's hands trembled. I only did what I had to do, she said, her voice cracking. You wouldn't have understood. Elena wasn't fit to raise you. She was dying. I gave you a life. You gave me a lie, I replied. And then Jacob spoke up for the first time. She was never supposed to find that letter, he said. I blinked. You knew? He laughed under his breath. I helped Mom clean out the brownstone years ago. I saw the trust paperwork, the letter from Elena. I read it. Mom said it was garbage, said she'd burn it. You let me believe she was just some distant aunt, I whispered. You let me think Isabella loved me like her own. He shrugged. Why blow up the family over something you can't change? That broke something in me. This isn't about change, I said, my voice sharp. It's about truth. Something this family has avoided like the plague. The room went silent. That night, I got a call from the DA's office. They were filing criminal charges against Jacob vehicular manslaughter and obstruction. My father was under investigation for conspiracy to cover up the incident. My mother was being reviewed for trust fraud and perjury. I didn't know what justice would look like, but I knew it would start with accountability. The final hearing for the civil case was scheduled for Friday morning. Jason called the night before. Just a heads up, they've hired a new lawyer, heavy hitter. Rumor is they're planning something drastic. What kind of drastic? Maybe trying to flip the narrative one last time. Possibly using mental health as a defense. I thought of the years I spent shrinking myself to protect them. The silence, the manipulation, the control. I wasn't the broken one. I'd just been raised in a broken system disguised as love. I arrived at court early the next morning wearing the only suit that still fit. I walked past reporters clustered on the courthouse steps, past cameras, past whispered questions. When I entered the courtroom, Jason leaned toward me. "You okay?" I nodded, ready. But nothing could have prepared me for what happened next. Because just before the judge entered the room, my mother stood up slowly, faced me, and said loud enough for the entire courtroom to hear, "You were never supposed to find out. None of it. Because you were never supposed to survive." The courtroom froze. I heard nothing for a full 5 seconds except the dull electric hum of the lights overhead and my own heartbeat punching against my ribs. My mother stood there, eyes, glassy lips, slightly parted, as if her confession had slipped out without her permission, or maybe because she finally wanted it to. "You were never supposed to survive." The words echoed in my skull like a fire alarm. Jason snapped his head toward me, his hand gripping my arm, gently grounding me. The judge hadn't entered yet. The room was still in that liminal state, pre-trial chaos, but now every breath in the room was held captive. "What did you just say?" I asked, my voice barely more than a whisper. She sat down as if her own legs couldn't carry the weight anymore. Her lawyer frantically leaned in, whispering, but she waved him off. For the first time in this entire war, she looked human. Not the cold strategist, not the composed suburban matriarch. Just a woman with nothing left to spin. "I didn't mean it like that," she muttered. "Not at first. But you weren't part of the plan. Elena was supposed to handle it. She got pregnant at the worst time. Sick, broke, stubborn, refused to give you up for adoption. And you, what I asked, heart-pounding, swooped in like a savior. I kept you from foster care," she said, like that absolved her. "I raised you like my own. But you were always hers, no matter what I did. And the older you got, the more you looked like her. And your father, he couldn't stand the reminder." Jason opened his mouth, but I raised a hand. "Let her talk." She closed her eyes. "He wanted you out of the house by 15. Said you were a bad influence on Jacob. Said you made us feel small. We pushed you so hard because we hoped you'd break, quietly, walk away, disappear." The words landed like punches I didn't feel until later. And still, I didn't cry. Not because I didn't want to, but because it was all so familiar. This wasn't a confession, it was confirmation. I hadn't been imagining it. I wasn't crazy. The judge entered moments later, and the hearing began as if none of that had happened. Jason filed an immediate motion to include the pretrial confession in the record. The judge allowed it, citing extraordinary relevance. My mother's lawyer objected, overruled. In the days that followed, everything unraveled for them. Jacob was indicted. The dashcam footage went viral after a leak someone from the courthouse, maybe someone tired of secrets. My parents' friends, their country club circle, their entire carefully curated reputation began to crumble. News vans parked outside their house. Reporters called me for comment. I gave them none. I didn't need revenge. I already had something better. Clarity. 3 weeks later, the civil court ruled in my favor. I retained sole ownership of the brownstone. Damages were awarded for identity theft, misuse of funds, emotional distress. It didn't fix everything, but it was something. A legal acknowledgement of the truth. Jacob pled guilty to obstruction. No jail time, just probation and mandatory community service. A slap on the wrist. But for a man like him, public shame was a deeper sentence. My mother didn't attend the final hearing. She sent a letter, handwritten, apologetic in tone, evasive in substance. "I hope one day you can understand," it said. I didn't reply. Instead, I took the keys to the brownstone, returned to Montclair, and stepped inside for the first time as its rightful owner. It smelled like dust and silence, the kind that settles when a place forgets it once had laughter in its halls. I walked room to room, fingertips grazing the worn edges of wallpaper. I found the nursery where I spent my first year. the back garden where Elena used to grow basil and rosemary, and in the attic, tucked behind a panel in the wall, I found another box. Inside were journals, her journals. Elena wrote everything. Her illness, her fears, her dreams for me. One entry read, "If he ever learns the truth, I hope he forgives me. I hope he finds the strength I prayed for him to have. And if he ever stands in this house again, I hope he doesn't feel abandoned. I hope he feels found." That night, I sat on the floor with her words in my lap and cried for the first time in months. Not out of pain, but release. And that should have been the end. But a week later, I received a call. Blocked number. A familiar voice, raspy, male. "You think you know everything," it said. "But you've only uncovered her side of the story. There's another file. One your mother kept hidden even from herself. Look for the Santoro Foundation records. 1989, New Haven." Click. The line went dead. I stared at the phone in my hand, the air around me thick with a new kind of dread. I thought the story was over. I thought I'd closed every door. But maybe one more had just opened. Story 2, quietly on my desk, was the invitation to the yearly reunion of the Thompson family. The large glass of my penthouse windows allowed in morning sunshine, which caused the gold-embossed lettering to gleam against the ivory paper. I believed that 14 years of secrecy were unbreakable, and it was going to fall apart immediately. Not because I wanted to, but because one headline had smudged the mask I'd put so much effort into keeping on. I grabbed my phone and clicked on the email that had revealed everything. Women to watch on Forbes. Olivia Thompson, the rising star of AI and digital art, helped her business reach a valuation of $2,000, $700 million. 2 days before the reunion on Monday morning, the piece would go up, and with every word, the quirky artist sister's shell would melt away. "Then your brother calls one again," my assistant Amanda remarked over the intercom. I sighed, I know. Daniel would call, of course. Since the piece broke to the major outlets, he had been phoning constantly. Still reclined in my chair, my gaze fixed on the skyline of Chicago, I pressed the accept button. "What on earth is going on?" "Olivia." Daniel skipped the politeness and snapped. "I was just asked by Bloomberg what it's like to have a sister who is a millionaire, but I was unaware of her existence." "Would you mind explaining?" I suppressed a grin. "On Monday, you'll find out. Similar to everyone else." "Do you mean me?" He was almost yelling. "Your parents worry about you every day. Everyone believes you are impoverished, making ends meet while borrowing money. They believed you had missed your opportunity, made all the incorrect decisions. Concerned." I chuckled quietly. "You refer to the critique as sarcasm. The talks about squandering my future anxiety. They just have your best interests in mind, you know." "Daniel, no. They wish for me to resemble you. Obtain an MBA, work for your father's business, lead a manageable, safe existence." Across the line, there was silence. The golden boy, Daniel, the successor, the living personification of expectations. At last, he inquired in a low voice, "For what duration have you been concealing this?" I saw my private aircraft touch down on the building across the street as I stood and made my way to the window. "Do you recall when I moved into that dilapidated West Side studio? When did you begin creating digital art?" "It was 14 years ago." "That's right. Everyone believed that I was squandering my Stanford economics degree in pursuit of fantasies. However, nobody was aware that I had already sold my first collection. Made $30,000. What Daniel suffocated. I made $120,000 6 months later when I sold a number of AI-generated pieces. In the next year, 900 yands. And I recently reached my first million while Dad was telling the family over Christmas dinner that I was obstinately unemployed. Despite Daniel's silence, I could practically hear his mind working. However, you continued to collect rent from Mom and Dad. For over 10 years, you drove the dilapidated Civic. I didn't accept payment. I made an investment proposition to them. They said no. I made the decision to live that way. I didn't have to. The easiest method to keep the family at bay was to be quiet. A helicopter. Daniel's voice broke. I have 3, and my business is worth about $2,700 million right now. However, it's closer to $3.50 when the support platforms are taken into account. Daniel took a deep breath as if he was having trouble breathing. I reached to stop the phone and said, "Now, if you'll pardon me, I need to get ready for an executive board meeting. Brother, I'll see you at the reunion." Before he could respond, I hung up and hit the intercom button once more. "Is everything prepared for the reunion, Amanda?" "Indeed, Miss Thompson. The aircraft is prepared." As requested, a Bentley will be used for transportation. As a private venue, the resort has been reserved. Every guest has a printed copy of every document. Fantastic. I took up the invitation and took another look at it. They had viewed me as a burden and a dreamer, but this time I would be the one narrating the tale and ensuring they would never forget it. I can still clearly recall that 23-year-old cold night. Outside my parents' old Vermont cottage, the entire family sat around the dinner table. Although there was a lot of snow falling, the temperature indoors was lower than the outdoors. With his wine glass in hand and a serious attitude as if he were at a board meeting rather than a family meal, Dad sat at the head of the table. "Olivia," his voice was forceful and low, "you need to take your future seriously now. Come work for the corporation and quit that computer art foolishness." I still had on a paint-stained sweatshirt that had just come from the studio. "I mean it, Father. I just completed a project for a Seattle-based software company. They compensated me only for using the image-generating algorithm I created." As if what I had to say were useless gibberish, he held out his hand to interrupt. "Real money is never paid for computer-generated images. It's a trend. A fantasy cannot last a lifetime." Mom sat next to him, sympathy shining in her eyes. She gave me a soft shoulder touch as though to comfort me. "Sweetheart, your father only has your best interests in mind. You hold a degree in economics with honors. For it, many would murder. For something so unknown, why squander it?" I looked at my 29-year-old sister Madison, the family's rising star, who had just been promoted to deputy CFO at a large company. At the meal, she showed off her new Hermes purse. Madison grinned. "Her wine is being watched. All you're afraid of is the actual world. I feel like I'm giving to a charity each time I send you money to pay your electricity bill." Everyone at the table chuckled. Like a horrible soundtrack I never wanted to hear again, their laughing echoed in my ears. I excused myself early that evening and walked upstairs to the old bedroom, which still had my high school trophies pasted on the walls and a fading floral carpeting. I silently gazed over the lines of code I had typed the previous day when I opened my laptop. No one in my family was aware that only 2 weeks prior, a European company had paid me more than $40,000 to utilize my picture production program in their advertising campaign. While I watched the art change with the algorithm, I kept it to myself. Nothing. My dismissal wasn't the first time. I begged my father for $150,000 when I was 26 years old so that I could start an AI-powered art-on-demand website. I had a list of possible customers, a functioning prototype, and a thorough business strategy. After 5 minutes of skimming, he folded it up and put it down. "We don't invest in illusions in our company. Return when you're ready to launch an accounting company or coffee shop." Madison simply gave a headshake. "I can always hire you. I'll provide you a consistent paycheck. Don't dream any longer." I declined both of them. I started an adventure when I relocated to Austin that same year. My family didn't really think it was real. They referred to me as the artistic misfit, the childish artist, and occasionally the withdrawn letdown of the Thompson household. It was the same at every reunion. They discussed concrete victories, investment funds, real estate, and interest rates. "So, what are you doing now?" I inquired periodically as I sat at the end of the table. Then courteous nods and a brief shift in topic followed. Madison got up at dinner last year, took out a huge package, and gave it to me in front of everyone. "Please accept this. I know you detest asking for loans. Consider it a present from your accomplished younger sister." I thanked her, put the envelope in my handbag, and grinned. I left it on the table unopened after the dinner and departed. The black card of my own business, which handles transactions totaling close to $100 million each month, was in my wallet at the time. I wasn't prepared for them to know, and they didn't know either. Every patronizing phrase, each sneer. I recalled everything every time they handed me money in the belief that they were being philanthropic. Not to exact retribution, but to create something so strong that they would never be able to accept that they previously considered me a failure. And that day is drawing near. At the beginning of my 27th year, I moved into a rundown loft in East Austin. It was just 400 square feet with a shoebox-sized bathroom and no central heating. I bathed under a little leaking nozzle every morning and made coffee by boiling water in an electric kettle. But I felt more alive than ever before. I had recently finished a $75,000 contract with a Swedish game firm to supply algorithms that created animated backdrops depending on user moods. But no one in my family knew that when I was eating instant noodles and wearing old sweaters. I still didn't want Olivia Thompson's name to appear on any headline, so a third-party business coded the project under a pseudonym. The digital art collection, Echoes of Light, a personal initiative that combined machine learning and visual memory data from thousands of survey respondents, was my first significant achievement. I used a secret exchange to sell the complete collection as unique digital assets. $48,000 was the final cost. I sobbed when I saw that figure appear on my account for the first time. It was the first time the world had acknowledged my goal, not because of the money. My second collection, Synthetic Reverie, came out 6 months later. This time, I worked with a music producer to make each composition a coordinated combination of sound and visuals. Over $220,000 was raised when a painting that could hum the whole collection sold out in less than 12 hours. I didn't improve my standard of living with that money. I employed a group of software developers to create my own platform using it. Lumina Frame is a digital platform that allows artists to employ artificial intelligence AI to produce works that reflect their individual styles and feelings. All artwork may be tokenized, exchanged, or shown in custom-designed virtual galleries, and each user would be given their own unique algorithm. I took my time promoting the platform. Before I went public, I wanted it to be flawless. Over the following 2 years, I led a normal life, even one that was below average. I continued to drive the 2008 Civic that I had spent $200 on. Leaning to the left is the passenger seat. The driver's side window was stuck, and the radio only picked up 2 stations. However, Madison always mentioned that she had recently upgraded to the newest Tesla Model S, so I continued to drive it to every family get-together. I continued to accept my mother's sad embraces, my father's empathetic looks, and my relatives' kind offerings. If you require lodging, out back we have a guest home. Do you want me to direct you to HR at my business? A communications assistant is being hired. I thanked them, grinned, and continued to act like the idealistic elder sister who hadn't fully matured. In the meantime, I had set up a business in Delaware to manage finances under a different name. To ensure untraceability, each transaction was divided and sent across 3 separate platforms. The Singaporean venture capital firm that funded the Lumina Frame project was unaware that I was the driving force behind it. They just knew me as Elle Vance, the inventor of an AI technology that is currently being utilized by large Asian animation companies. In a Series B fundraising round, the platform was valued at $780 million by the time I reached 31. However, I kept that information from my family members. I just got a nicer espresso machine and replaced the old curtains in my flat, which was still the same. The explanation was straightforward. I wasn't prepared. When my father told me I was lucky, I wasn't prepared. I didn't want Madison to perceive me as a danger. She preferred to assist rather than her eccentric artist sister. Furthermore, I wasn't prepared to hear my mother express concern that I was withdrawing too much. When the truth came out, I wanted it to be indisputable. No justifications, no excuses, no acting as though I never informed them or that they were unaware. I wanted it to be so genuine and enormous that no one could take it away or distort it. I desired for them to observe, and it was closer than ever to the day when the whole Thompson family would have to confront my true self. The item was prominently displayed on Forbes' site as the sun rose. Olivia Thompson and the Quiet Rise of a $3,000 to $1,000 200 million AI empire was the big headline. The image I selected featured me standing with Peace, the platform's top seller, in the Lumina Frame main gallery, costing $500,000. Behind me, my phone started buzzing constantly after 10 minutes. Communications, calls and emails, fulfilling demands, invitations to interviews and offers of partnerships, a flood that never seems to stop. I sipped my espresso while watching the mayhem play out on the 3 monitors on my desk with a composed stare. After 5 years of being muted, the family group chat had burst. Madison, is this genuine? Olivia, holy shade tea. Daniel, this paper is a complete waste. There must be some error. Mom, Olivia, I must speak with you. Give me a call now. We must speak alone, Dad. I didn't answer any calls before the reunion, so I placed the phone down. The time had come. They experienced what it was like to be abandoned, as if they had abandoned me. I reclined in my chair and gazed through the glass at the skyline of Chicago, dancing over the chilly steel buildings as the morning light. Every structure served as a reminder I had made the correct decision. The doorbell rang, abrasive and demanding. Amanda appeared a little agitated as she entered the office. A woman below is posing as your mother, Miss Thompson. She is unwilling to go. I nodded and let out a sigh. Lift her up. After 10 minutes, my mother and Thompson entered the private elevator as it opened. Her beige Chanel suit was still immaculate and wrinkle-free, and her hair was still done well. But I almost didn't recognize the lady who used to be calm under pressure because of the fear and bewilderment in her eyes. The digital artwork on the far wall caught her attention as she glanced over the penthouse, the black flooring, and the floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the cityscape. One of my works now worth more than $500,000, she stuttered. Olivia. What is this? Is this where you call home? I went to pour her a cup of tea at the table. I own it. I own 3 of them in Chicago. Although I almost ever use them, I have 2 more in Vancouver and Manhattan. With her eyes focused on mine, she sank onto the Italian leather chair across from me. You, for all these years, what have you been up to? I assumed you were selling a few paintings to make ends meet. I believed I understood your thoughts. Calm, yet razor sharp, I sliced into my voice. While Madison was moving up the financial ladder and Daniel was flipping houses, I know that everyone assumed I was the failed elder sister wandering about with a laptop and a pipe dream. I served as a warning to the family. Mom cast her gaze downward. I silently drew out a folder from a drawer and set it down in front of her. I presented my dad with this investment suggestion 6 years ago. I requested that he contribute $200,000 to the development of Lumina Frame. No, he responded. Called me a needless danger. The current value of such investment would be almost $94 million. She turned the pages with trembling hands. Everything is clearly spelled out, including growth charts, finance agreements, and strategic client lists. She let out a gasp. Your dad? You were only requesting money, he replied. Why did you conceal everything? How come you didn't tell me nobody ever truly wanted to listen? So for once, I looked her in the eye. You keep changing the topic whenever I bring up the project. Each time I said I was engrossed in a daydream, according to Dad, like she was doing me a favor. Madison gave me money. Daniel gave me a job offer as a junior accountant, as if he were saving me from disaster. The room was so quiet that it pushed against the walls. With tear-streaked eyes, my mother raised her head. You're correct. I didn't pay attention. When I looked, I saw nothing. I gave a soft nod. However, things have changed since then. All of them will be seen by the family. From the adjoining hangar, I could see my private plane as I went out onto the balcony. Glistening in the sunshine, my name was emblazoned in dazzling gold over its surface. Less than 48 hours remained until the reunion, and I would not be seated at the end of the table in silence this time. Even if I were the one entering, nobody could turn away. The morning of the reunification of the Thompson family. As though the cosmos itself were preparing for a reckoning that no one would ever forget, the sky was a perfect blue. Just weeks after finalizing my first billion-dollar sale, I stood on the main deck of the 3-story yacht Vera, which was tied off Montclair Island, the private island I had bought about a year prior. 4 helicopters landed at the landing strip in the distance, one after the other, and O was given a huge greeting. The white stone of Thompson Retreat gleamed in the tropical sunlight. Massive LED panels on each side of each pad played a loop of digital pieces I had made, such as Synthetic Reverie, The Memory Orchard, and Code of Solace, the same pieces my father waved away when I suggested we collaborate on an investment. Wading up the marble walk that led to the central villa property, I tightened the collar of my white silk shirt while keeping my gaze on the line of Rolls-Royce Phantoms. According to the itinerary, each automobile had been specifically designated to drive family members from the airport to the waterfront and then aboard the boat or helicopter. My father, Richard Thompson, emerged when the door opened after the first helicopter touched down. His eyes flickered slightly alongside him, yet he was still as stately as ever. Anne, my mother, had a taut face as though she was forcing herself to think that none of this was possible. Wearing designer labels from head to toe, Madison and her husband Carter were transported in the second helicopter. Madison took a step back, looked around her face, and tensed up when her eyes found the sign with my name on it. It never occurred to her that the reunion she had proposed would take place at a resort in Scottsdale would now take place on an island owned by the sister she used to refer to as a family duty. I got off the deck of the yacht. I have my hands in my pockets. Though subtle, my smiles are as sharp as a blade. "Hello, everybody," I said. I could easily hear my voice in the wide air. "I hope you had a comfortable journey." Trying to maintain a level voice, my father was the first to speak. "Olivia, everything. Was all of this really required?" With my lips curling, I cocked my head. "It depends on your definition of required, father. I thought it was time for a change of pace after 10 years of reunions in unmemorable hotels." "Different?" Madison repeated, eyes wide as she peered at the glass-covered villas set between rows of palms. "You own an island. Technically, it's a complex, but sure, the island is center." I grinned. "Everyone ready for the reunion?" No one answered. I made a motion, and the fleet of Phantoms shot ahead at once, transporting each group to their individual villas in accordance with a plan I had personally created. The name of each passenger was displayed on a shining acrylic plaque in each room. There was also a personalized welcome packet inside. I went with the flow. Dappled shadows are created on the stone by sunlight filtered through the leaves. We arrived at the main hall. Standing in a line, uniformed employees held cold fruit mocktails that were appropriate for all age groups and adapted to health regulations. At 7 o'clock, dinner will be served. I looked at the family. You are free to relax or check out the East Wing display in the meanwhile. If you look closely, you can see that each section contains a tiny LED display that shows the current value of each piece of art in real time. It also features a few new works that I have never exhibited previously. My dad narrowed his eyes like a museum exhibit, blockchain networked, and by invitation only, not exactly like a museum. Madison turned to face Carter and said something I couldn't hear, but I could see the mix of amazement, mistrust, and envy on her face. A part of her was trying to figure out how the crazy elder sister she used to feel sorry for had created an entire kingdom right in front of them. For an instant, I remained motionless as I saw them dispersing across the retreat. They all had confused expressions overcome by the opulence all around them. And when they gathered around the huge dining table under the crystal dome tonight, I was just getting started. I would provide them with more than just art and data. This time I wouldn't be sitting inconspicuously at the far end of the table or chatting gently. Instead, I would show them exactly what they had been missing over the previous decade. They would have to confront the reality, and I would be in the middle. At one point, they were too preoccupied with pitying me to see that I had established an empire. The large table covered in white silk was bathed in warm golden light. Inside a hall with glass panels that looks out into the starry night sky. An ivory envelope and a name card were placed on each seat. Like small stars, the light was captured by crystal glasses. Dressed in sleek black and white, the personnel waited calmly on each side, waiting for orders. Still shaky on their feet, the Thompsons stumbled in. Nobody said anything. I knew they were still in shock since each had already examined the envelope that had been put in their individual suite earlier. I had planned something special for each envelope. Madison was shown a graphic that contrasted my daily passive income from investments with her highly praised six-figure salary. Daniel received a report describing how his real estate company had previously turned down a partnership offer from Lumina, Frame from 4 years ago, and how that agreement would now treble their yearly income if it were approved. A portfolio with the heading, "The Missed Investment $200,000 to $96 million," in italics was presented to my father, Richard. After everyone had seated themselves, I stood up. Slowly, my gaze swept across each face, tense, unsure, and wary. Some did not look at each other. Madison fussed about her serviette. In an attempt to look calm, my mother sat up straighter than normal. I appreciate everyone's presence tonight. Before supper, I started in a quiet but forceful voice. I want to share something with you. I hit a button on a little remote control that was tucked away in my pocket. A title appeared as the lights faded the glass wall behind the table and changed into a transparent screen. Opportunities Lost and the Forgotten Journey. In the first picture, I was 24 years old, sitting in a small apartment with an outdated laptop resting on my lap. The Kid Who Never Grew Up is a 2013 text read. $48,000 was sold in the first collection. I moved gently across the table while keeping my eyes on the television. The next slide shows me giving the 2016 Lumina frame pitch while positioned at a whiteboard. Here's a quote from my dad. "Do you believe that consumers will pay for computer-generated images? It's not art, it's an illusion." The growth chart followed. Each milestone was accompanied by a well-known comment. Madison 2018, "Inspiration and quick noodles aren't sustainable." Daniel 2020. "When individuals are investing in real estate who needs pictures," 2022. "Why don't you teach art the way you loved painting Mom? It is more steady." The lights came back on. At the head of the table, I remained still. "Concrete is lighter than the air. What made you conceal it?" With a quiet voice, my father asked. "Why not speak up?" I was staring at him the entire time. Nor bitter, nor furious. Just be clear, as nobody was paying attention. I made an effort. Each time I raised my voice, you shifted the topic. I received a smirk every time I made a suggestion. Each time I discussed AI or digital art or anything else that didn't fit your idea of success, I was thrown out. I looked over at Madison. "Remember when you told me to simply take the envelope that you pushed at me in front of the entire family? I understand you. Have you ever considered the possibility that I didn't require assistance? Simply show respect." Madison remained silent. Her fingers clenched around her glass as she bent her head. "This isn't to boast," I said, "but to show everyone that success doesn't always look like what you're used to." Silence doesn't necessarily imply failure, and you don't have to follow the road your family has chosen to achieve success. My mother's voice was no more than a whisper when she blinked. "We were mistaken. I was mistaken. I was unaware of your progress." I gave a soft grin. "You don't have to apologize to me. All I need is for you to see me. Can you actually see me, not the person you wanted me to be?" I held out my glass. 100 tiny stars are formed by the refraction of light. I said, "Let's eat now." However, nobody needs to act like someone they're not this time. Being judged doesn't have to make someone shrink. The whole family is seated here. And I'm Olivia Thompson, the top of the table now after earlier being ignored. There was a long period of silence. Daniel then lifted his glass carefully in Olivia's direction. "And to the most important lesson you just taught us all," he continued. They raised their glasses in the wine's golden light one by one. For the first time in years, I saw anything. Genuine acknowledgement. Once everyone had gone back to their rooms after supper, I remained behind, seated on a plush leather armchair in the glass atrium. I'm holding a cup of herbal tea. Outside, the moonlight stretched like a silver ribbon across the ocean as the sea moved with gentle waves. After a day of reckoning, I sat there for a while, relishing the first moment of peace. I was not labeled delusional. No more pity glances. No more remarks that viewed me as a problem that needed to be resolved. I was not rejected or given an explanation for the first time in a decade. Soft footsteps resounded. It was Richard, my father, who had lost his tie and was still dressed in the white shirt he had worn to dinner. Before he spoke, he sat in the chair opposite from me and silently observed me for a while. "None of us ever could have predicted what you did, and I'm proud and embarrassed of that." I didn't answer. To listen, I just cocked my head. I always believed that stability was the aim and that being creative should be a pastime rather than a job. However, it is now evident who was actually looking in the incorrect place. I put down my tea. Your decision to take the safe route for yourself wasn't incorrect. You were mistaken to believe that it was the only way for everyone. He nodded while his eyes lingered on the wall's code of comfort and calm. Me and your mom. We were terrified since we didn't understand the language you used to communicate, and people deny when they're scared. He took a folded piece of paper out of his pocket and laid it on the table. Though I thought it should come straight from me, I was going to put this in your room. I took it open. There was no mistaking his penmanship. Olivia, I wouldn't force you to pick between your dream and your family if I could go back in time. I lost the opportunity to contribute to a project, but more importantly, I lost the opportunity to accompany you on that trip. I apologize for not listening to you when you needed it most, not simply for questioning you. You're more than just a success. A new planet has been built by you, and I'm honored to be Olivia Thompson's father for the first time. I held the letter in my hands and gently folded it. I almost convinced myself that this moment would never arrive since I had been waiting for it for so long. Oddly enough, though, I didn't feel triumphant or outraged when it happened. I simply felt calm. The following morning, the whole family assembled in the main auditorium to watch me showcase my most recent effort on a plain stage against a black background. Wearing a navy blue jumpsuit, I took a step forward. There was a sense of subdued expectation as the light gently focused. I appreciate everyone sticking. I started. I would want to provide a completely fresh chapter the next phase in this trip today. I pressed the remote control. The emblem of an Ethereum. A platform for rewriting reality appeared on the screen behind me. I have spent the last 3 years fostering the Ethereum project. It's more than simply a digital art platform. It's a hybrid environment where safe blockchain augmented reality and customized AI meet. A location where anybody may design, own, and reside in their own creative space. A universe unconstrained by a screen, stage, or painting. A little child creating a virtual library of her grandparents' memories, and an architect creating a real-time interactive model of his ideas within a mixed reality setting were among the sample clips I showed. With a valuation of more than $10 billion, this enterprise has concluded its Series C investment round. You are the first to see its full potential today. There was no sound in the room. Daniel was the first to speak. Olivia, if it's okay with you, I'd want to switch some of my personal investments to Ethereum. This is actually valuable not because you're my sister. Madison stood up slowly. Although I may not fully comprehend all the technical jargon I am aware of when something is revolutionary and will do my best to promote it. I grinned. I didn't require their atonement. They only needed to verify those statements to me. There was more to them than a check. I went back to the little villa on the island's west side by myself that night. Through the open drapes, a gentle sea air floated. I put a framed copy of my very first NFT sale next to my father's letter. I placed a new frame with the Forbes headline, my picture standing in front of the Lumina frame, and a little line underneath it on the nightstand which cost $48,000. This was not done to disprove anyone. I took this action in order to uphold my moral convictions. I woke up before dawn the following morning. The wooden floor was covered in golden spots as the soft light from the sea streamed through the large glass windows. The waves outside spoke like the steady breath of a world I had created. It comes from hours of labor lines of code and innumerable invisible failures, not from fiction. With a steaming cup of coffee in front of me, I put on a light robe and went out onto the patio. The island was beginning to awaken. The aroma of toast filled the air as staff prepared breakfast outside. Below, tables were arranged neatly with palms swaying in the background. I observed Daniel sitting by himself at a stone table, his iPad eyes fixed intently as though he were studying something profoundly, and Madison strolling with Mom. To me, the real sense of achievement was when everything was at ease. Nor the cheers, nor the long overdue compliments. Not even the startling statistics, but the liberty to live according to your convictions without needing to defend them or seek approval from others. I reflected on the journey I had taken at the beginning, living in a small apartment with just an outdated laptop, adjusting pixel location and coding to fit mood during the restless nights. The times I declined assistance that everyone said I was stupid for declining. When they dubbed me a failure, I had said nothing. But I continued to create during that quiet. I did not establish this empire to exact retribution or to establish a point. It was something I had to make, because I would lose myself if I didn't do it. We all have dreams that the outside world might not comprehend, but from the beginning, nobody owes the world comprehension. In actuality, great achievements frequently start off alone. Nobody is standing by your side when no one is encouraging you, and all the doors appear to be closed. And at that very time, if you continue, if you have the courage to believe in the invisible, if you silently continue to put brick after brick, the world will eventually be forced to see. The breakfast proceeded in a calm setting. People's gaze changed and they started chatting to me. No longer dismissive or guarded. This time, and for the first time, it was true curiosity. Show respect. Daniel wanted to know how Ethereum works. Madison mentioned possible cooperation with the marketing department of her business. Even my hitherto reticent father extended an invitation to attend an international banking meeting next month, where he would serve as the main speaker. I took my time accepting. I nodded, grinned, and just replied, "I'll give it some thought," because I had the freedom to choose for the first time. Rather than hoping to be selected after breakfast, I went to inspect the west part of the island with Amanda, my assistant, and the recently hired CEO of Lumina Frame, where I intended to construct the first digital arts center that combined extended reality technology with physical space. Amanda gave me a tablet that displayed how many new people had joined since the project's debut yesterday. Almost 1 million in less than a day. The fact that I knew this wasn't the pinnacle made me happy, not the number. I would go on, and it was only the start of a whole new story. No more hiding. I went back to the auditorium by myself that evening, where I had previously shown the chronology of my achievements. I stood in the empty room and played back an old webcam recording of myself at the age of 23. My eyes flaming with conviction, showing it to no one. After letting it finish, I turned to face my younger self on the screen. All that girl had was faith. No wealth, no celebrity. Nobody had faith in her. But she persisted. I grinned. "Olivia, you succeeded," I muttered. "And this is only the first chapter." I walked out into the pitch-black night sky, which was dotted with a million brilliant stars. There was an island under my feet, the representation of a dream, once made fun of. The future lay before me, without a well-traveled route. I would only carve one personally. Because proving people incorrect isn't the goal of true accomplishment. It's about living your life according to your convictions. Because I followed a road that no one believed in. I was once ridiculed and excluded from all discussions about accomplishment until the very end. But I created an empire in that quiet. I also no longer require late recognition or applause. I simply need to know that I never gave up and that I had faith in myself. Fanfare does not lead to success. It results from remaining loyal, even if the world ignores you. How do you feel about Olivia's path and her decision to confront her family? Please leave a comment below with your ideas, and remember to follow the channel for more encouraged family tales like this one.